Now that we have a basic understanding of how to navigate around the GTN, let's look at how we can expect to set up the system in preparation for flight. In this lesson, we'll cover how to tune your communication and navigation radios, the different controls for an optionally mounted remote transponder, how to create a flight plan, and finally, viewing terminal procedure charts. You will come to find out there is normally more than one way to accomplish a single task using the GTN. The different methods are outlined in detail in the GTN Pilot's Guide. I suggest you review these different methods and settle on which method is most intuitive to you. It is very possible that the method in which you choose will vary during the different phases of flight. This course will cover the methods that have been found to be most commonly used in the aircraft. The two primary methods for programming a frequency are by using the touchscreen or using the bottom right dual control knob on the GTN bezel. Let's say, for example, you are currently en route while flying an IFR flight plan. You are instructed by ATC to contact Kansas City Approach on 118.9er. To enter this frequency using the touchscreen control, you would first select the standby communication frequency window on the GTN. Now that the number pad appears on the display, simply type in 1, 8, and 9. As you can see, the GTN will automatically place the leading 1 and trailing 0 into the frequency, software version 5.11 or higher. You can either enter this number straight into the active field by selecting the transfer key or place it in the standby field using the enter key. When you are ready to transmit on 118.9er, press the active window and this will flip-flop the standby frequency into the active. What if you don't intend to transmit over this frequency and you only wish to monitor it, like ATIS for example? When using the keypad to enter a frequency into the standby window, you can select the monitor key on the touchscreen. This allows the pilot to monitor the standby frequency without changing the active frequencies. If there is a transmission on the active frequency, the unit will automatically switch back to the active frequency. Once that transmission ceases, the unit will again monitor the standby frequency. When monitoring a frequency, a green monitor annunciation appears above the standby communication frequency. To disable monitoring, select the standby window and select the monitor key again, extinguishing the green bar below. If present flight conditions are not conducive to using the touchscreen, then you can use the lower right knob to enter the frequency. The first step is to ensure the desired standby frequency has been selected, since this knob can be used for both communication and navigation radios. Pressing in on the knob will transfer selection between the communication and navigation standby frequencies, and is indicated by the blue text in the selected standby window. With the standby communication frequency highlighted in blue, rotate the outer knob to set the desired megahertz and the inner knob for kilohertz. Now that the frequency has been entered into the standby window, pressing and holding it on the knob will transfer the selected standby frequency into the active window. Due to the smaller 600 display size, only one set of frequencies can be displayed at one time. Pressing in on the dual knob will change the frequency window between the communication radio and the navigation radio. After 30 seconds, this frequency window will default to display communication frequencies. Let's say, however, that you are setting up for your departure from Rocky Mountain Metropolitan prior to taxi. In this instance, you may have several frequencies to tune, some of which are unfamiliar to you. In this situation, it is advantageous to insert the frequencies straight from the waypoint information page. From the home page, select the waypoint info key, followed by the airport key. Selecting the frequencies tab on the right-hand side presents a list of all frequencies for that airport. At this point, you can select the first frequency required, and this will auto-populate the standby window with that frequency. Transfer this into the active window, and select the next frequency to be used from the list to place that into the standby window. You can see that the waypoint info page has defaulted to your departure airport. If you are looking for information about a different airport, simply select the identifier window and type in the new identifier and select Enter. Use these same methods to tune a navigation frequency. Once a frequency has been entered, the identifier of the nearest station in the database is displayed below the frequency. When an identifier appears above a navigation frequency, the GTN has positively identified the nav aid using its Morse code identifier. If you wish to listen to the Morse code over the navigation frequency, select the standby frequency with the dual knob, press in on the nav volume knob, and rotate to set the desired volume level. When this audio is enabled, an ID annunciator appears in the top right corner of the active navigation window. As I mentioned before, the GTN Navigator series offers an optional interface to select models of Garmin transponders. When interfaced to a transponder, The GTN provides the pilot with their primary control interface for squawk code, mode selection, and ident functions. When this equipment is installed, the transponder interface is located at the top of the display on the GTN 700 series and to the right of the display on the 600 series. When the avionics are first powered up, the transponder mode and code will appear the same as they were when the aircraft had been shut down. For example, if the last squawk code in transponder mode was 4110 in standby mode before shutdown, the GTN will power up with the identical code and mode selections. When ATC assigns you a squawk code prior to departure or any time after that, select the squawk code window and use the number pad to type in the associated code. As we have seen before, you may use the dual knob to enter the code in as well. Use the small knob to specify the digit and the large knob to move the cursor. Once the code has been set, either select the Enter key to make this your active transponder code or the ident window to both activate the code and ident upon ATC request. If you are making the transition from IFR to VFR and ATC instructs you to squawk VFR, selecting the VFR key will automatically set the VFR squawk code. Available transponder operating modes are displayed below the number pad. Mode selection may be performed automatically by the transponder based on whether the aircraft is recognized as being on the ground or airborne. Typically, this automatic switch is activated based on either ground speed or landing gear position. You may also manually select the transponder mode. Select the desired mode at the bottom of the screen to switch modes, illuminating the green bar below. The current operating mode is indicated below the squawk code at the top of the screen. This code and mode indication will appear in green for all mode selections except standby mode, which will appear in white. If requested by ATC to ident, select the ident window above the squawk code at the top of the display. An ID enunciation will appear in the top right corner of this window as the transponder sends out an extra pulse, highlighting your position to ATC. The ident function will automatically turn off after a short period of time. Note, transponder modes and capabilities will vary depending on the model and software version of transponder interfaced to the GTN. Refer to your airplane flight manual and pilot's guide for install-specific information. Once you have received your clearance from air traffic control, it is time to load your flight plan into the GTN by selecting the flight plan key from the home page. You'll see at the top of the page that your departure airport is automatically placed at the top of your flight plan as long as the GTN has acquired satellites. From this page, we can enter additional waypoints, load airways, and select procedures for both our departure and destination airport, including departures, arrivals, and approaches. Our planned route from Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport to Garden City Regional will take us along the Plane 7 departure using the Goodland VOR transition, then Victor Airway 17 to the Garden City VOR. Let's assume that ATC has cleared us to the Garden City Airport via this route. Since Rocky Mountain Metro is already in the flight plan, we can immediately go to loading the departure procedure. Begin by selecting KBJC to display the Waypoint Options menu. Select Load Procedures and choose Departure from the list of available procedure types. The GTN immediately prompts us to select from a list of available departure procedures. Scroll down the list using the down arrow in the bottom right corner until you see Plane 7 and select that line from the list. Now we must select the transition in which the departure will terminate. Scroll down this list to select the Goodland VOR. Note the runway field that currently reads All. If we had chosen a departure that was specific to only a select number of runways, we would be required to specify this parameter. This particular procedure is not runway specific, and therefore the GTN automatically skips this field. Once all parameters have been specified, select the Load Departure key. This will automatically activate the leg between KBJC and the Denver VOR, indicated by the magenta staple connecting the two waypoints. The next portion of the flight plan to load into the GTN is Victor Airway 17 between the Goodland VOR and the Garden City VOR. The first step to loading any airway is to insert the point you intend to enter the airway from. Since GLD is already in the flight plan, we can skip this step. Select GLD to again display the Waypoint Options menu and select Load Airway. The GTN immediately prompts you to select from a list of airways that cross through the Goodland VOR. We will select Victor 17. This list may also contain J, T, and Q routes. Next, we must select the exit waypoint we intend to leave Victor 17 from. By default, these waypoints are listed sequentially from west to east, but can also be listed alphabetically by selecting the Sort Alpha key. Select GCK from the list of exit waypoints, then select Load to place the airway in the flight plan. Normally, if we are going to be flying on the airway for a short period, the sequential base direction works best. However, if we are going to fly a long distance, it is often easier to select and use the alphabetical setting because of the many fixes listed for the airway. The final step in completing the flight plan is to enter our destination waypoint, Garden City Regional. Select Add Waypoint at the bottom of the active flight plan page, use the touchscreen keypad to enter the waypoint identifier, KGCK. If current conditions make using the touchscreen problematic, you may also use the lower right knob to enter the identifier. Rotate the small knob to select the first letter of the identifier. This first digit defaults to the letter K after one twist. Use the large knob to move the cursor over one spot and then the small knob to select G. Repeat this process to complete the identifier. In the top right of the screen is the Fast Find function. This window displays the identifier for the waypoint you are most likely attempting to load into the flight plan based on the direction of your flight. As we can see, the GTN has predicted KGCK before we have entered the full identifier. Touch this field to automatically place KGCK into the flight plan. Now that our flight plan is complete, we want to verify that all the data we've entered matches our pre-flight planning. Confirm that the cumulative distance on this flight plan page matches that distance entered on your nav log. Be aware that certain procedures that contain manual sequencing, such as vectors, may cause this distance to vary. In addition, we can preview the route overlaid on a map. Select Menu on the flight plan page, and then the Preview key. This will display both the sequence of waypoints as well as a graphical display on a miniaturized navigation map. This preview feature, along with the cumulative distance readout, will ensure that we have not inadvertently entered an incorrect waypoint. In addition to the map page, the GTN 700 series can be loaded with terminal procedure charts, also providing a great resource for situational awareness and procedural accuracy while flying. This electronic chart database will either resemble paper FAA terminal publications called flight charts or those produced by Jeppesen called Chart View. To access these charts, select the Charts key from the home page. Based on information you've entered into the GTN and your present state and location, an airport and chart is auto-loaded onto the page. The order in which charts are auto-loaded into the GTN is Most Recent Manually Selected Chart During Current Power Cycle, Airport Surface Chart for the nearest airport when on the ground, the Approach Chart for the approach in the active flight plan, the Airport Surface Chart for the last airport in the flight plan, the Airport Surface Chart for the nearest airport if airborne and no flight plan exists. You can manually program an airport by selecting the airport identifier window and typing in the correct airport identifier. The chart that is currently being displayed on the page is listed below the airport identifier. Here we see the airport diagram. All of the charts for a single airport will fall into one of four categories: information such as takeoff minimums and land and hold short operations, departures, arrivals, and approaches. To view a specific chart, first select the category followed by the name of the approach. Today we have planned on departing Rocky Mountain Metro on the Plains 7 departure. To view this chart, we'll select Departures and then choose Plains 7 from the list of departures. To see a full screen version of the chart, select the full key at the bottom of the page. Some charts are georeferenced, displaying our location overlaid on the chart. When a chart does not support georeferencing, a symbol of an aircraft with an X going through it appears in the lower right corner of the screen. In addition to georeferencing, charts can be selected as an overlay on the moving map page. From the map page, select the menu key and ensure charts have been enabled as an overlay, indicated by this green bar. The chart chosen to display on the map is based on either the approach in the active flight plan or the surface chart for the nearest airport within 200 nautical miles if no approach exists in the flight plan. Only parts of the chart that support georeferencing will be overlaid, such as text blocks and profile views. The charts database updates either on a 14-day cycle, chart view, or a 28-day cycle, flight charts. It is not recommended that charts that have expired be used for reference in flight. In addition, charts will disable, making them unavailable for viewing at a specific number of days post-expiration. That is 70 days for chart view and 180 days for flight charts. Note, Jeppesen Chart View requires an additional enablement card that can be purchased from Garmin through an authorized dealer. The GTN can be configured to display either flight charts or chart view, but not both at once.